So how did this creator go from being a full-time surgeon, doing a 9 to 5 job, maybe even longer as a surgeon, to creating a social media brand that got over 500,000 followers and selling out multiple apparel collections based on what he loved, fashion and football? Let's dive in. Okay, so the first thing to notice is trustworthiness. So in some of his videos, he talks about the behind the scenes of how the fashion and apparel industry works. So for example, here he discusses about how trees become a t-shirt. So he's talking about the cotton plant, the things that it takes for it to become a t-shirt, and ultimately how that goes into you for $15. And he shares the process behind that. So you now get an understanding of what is going on behind the industry. Now, he's also not presenting himself as an expert. In a way, he's presenting himself as somebody that is learning this and has now shared this information to us. He's not saying like from my years of experience as an apparel designer or from my years of experience doing this, but more so it's like, hey, this is some fun information, let me just share it. So coming from that point of view as being somebody that you can trust establishes him as someone that you can go to for reliable information about apparel, which he is doing here as he's sharing about apparel and he's talking about what is happening in the apparel building process from going from raw material to where it is, where the consumer buys it. And his other videos as well also covers things like that. He talks about the history behind techwear and what our ideas of techwear is and where techwear is being placed in the market currently. So here he is speaking as if he is a consumer, but a little more educated than the typical consumer. So imagine someone that is in the forums, like back in the day, there were a lot of these hypebeast forums where people who were interested in specific niches like denim jeans or raw denim, specifically where I was in, there are a lot of people in this space who had years of experience just studying what's going on in the industry, how it's made, popular brands, and you would ask them for this sage knowledge. So essentially, what Ken is doing here is he's coming to you with that sage knowledge because he has put in the research and he's telling you what's going on. And you can go and research this yourself by Googling it and it'll come back correct. So by establishing himself this way, we trust him more when he is presenting us with information. Now, he also does another thing called storytelling. In his videos, when he brings up a certain idea of something or the history of something, he tells the story behind it. So here he's talking about duck canvas, which you probably find in a lot of your pants. And duck canvas, he's telling us about how it started, how it ended up, where it is now, and all the in-between. So as he's doing this storytelling, it's very engaging because if you think about it, humans have been telling stories all throughout time. And stories is one of the easiest ways to get people engaged in your videos. I know when I was making TikTok videos, I was telling stories, and that was the best way to get videos that got a lot of retention. One of my other friends as well, he runs a 300K sub channel, and he also tells stories. That's like his best performing videos. Now, when you tell a story, people are entranced and want to know what is happening because usually stories have this magical element to it. So as he's telling the story about the duck canvas, he talks about how that transforms into Carhartt and why Carhartt is one of this very well-respected brand right now because we've seen this huge surgence of workwear being popular on social media, and this is the perfect timing to incorporate both of those. So he does this really well by talking about the fabric behind a very popular piece of clothing and also how this clothing came about. And so because of those two things, now you're educated and you're entertained because there was a story behind it. Now, what this does is it further establishes himself as a very credible expert in this subject matter because he's gone out and done the research. So for this one, he uses a lot of different B-roll that describes what is going on with the fabric, what is happening with duck, where duck came from. And then he talks about how duck has evolved into the future and what is to be expected of the canvas in the future. So his own outlook on it. And for us to see his thoughts on how this fabric has changed throughout time and its application towards modern day contemporary fashion and how it's using contemporary fashion really solidifies his credibility. Now, the next part is showing the behind the scenes. He details the process behind everything that's happening with his apparel company. So for this example, he's talking about trousers and how these trousers were designed. He takes us back 50 years. He talks about the style at that time, how it was made, how it was constructed. And then he goes on to talk about the fabrics that are found in this pair of pants. And then he brings up some more credibility by showing a customer messaging and interacting with him. And then that further brings us into this story that he's telling about his passion in creating this brand, this clothing, this apparel brand, and using some special unique fabrics with attention to details that pay homage to all of these heritage styles of construction, material, and how things are presented. He also does really personal pieces like this one, for example, where he talks about going on a photo shoot, how he feels nervous and things that might come up, and showing the behind the scenes of what it's actually like to run a company or to run a fashion house, to run a fashion brand like this. Because you don't usually see founders go out and show the behind the scenes. And because he is doing this right now, and we're also seeing this emergence of founder-led creative. So this is actually perfect timing for all of that, because it's like the next step towards transparency. Because if you think about it, in the 2010s, there was this huge emergence of transparency in companies where B2C companies were starting to get more popular. And so now we're starting to see founders be in the forefront talking and sharing about their experience running this company. That leads me to the other point of creator-led creatives. So creator-led creatives, as in creators are the founder of them creating content for that particular brand. So we see here him talking about where he started off having next to no followers and then how he built this brand up. Now, the thing is, with the creator creating this creative and sharing this behind the scenes, showing what the company culture is actually like, consumers are more likely to understand the ethos of this particular brand or company and want to trust them more. So with Ken's videos, for example, I trust that he has good judgment in the materials that he's using, the silhouettes that he's using for his clothes. He also backs it up by sharing all the different perspectives and history that goes into certain decision making as he's designing a piece of garment. So when we see these creators and what is actually going on behind the scenes, it makes it a bit more closer for us and the creator. So instead of just being like the screen between us, there is now the screen and his thought. So we kind of understand him a bit more. Now, the last point I want to make is his educational abilities. He's so good at educating us, the consumer, about the process, what's happening in the process. He really highlights every individual thing that is happening, that because of that, we're getting educated and entertained as well. One of the keys to making a good video is edutainment, and he nails it very well. So he does the educational and the entertainment stuff, because you could also see his personality speak through the videos as well. And if you look at some of the other videos, you could see like, hey, look, he's tired. He's talking about him in Japan, and he's probably gonna tell us about what went on in his mind as he's in Japan. So that's the behind the scenes, that's showing creator-led content. And then he's also probably gonna educate us on some certain parts of Japan, the way that things are crafted there, how things are made there, and just different things that we from the Western world might not know about Japan. And this goes on with many of his other videos as well, because he shares about clothing, how this clothing was made, how it was designed. So for example, this one, he shows about the different measurements, and I've seen tech kits as well on some of his videos. And he just goes in and shows every little detail about what is happening. And so if somebody isn't in position to buy his clothes, they can consume his stuff and still get a lot of value from it, because they are learning these lessons in fashion, in design, in history. Now, the last thing to highlight, he's starting a movement. So for example, he made some apparel pieces for a fictional football company. Now, from here, he's like, hey, this is just my passion. But if you join in, we can make this an actual thing. It'll be apparel for high quality football players, except this is not a real team at all. It has an interesting concept, and it has kind of a us versus you feeling, where traditionally, if you were to get football clothes, soccer in the US, it would be just for teams that are super big. But now he's starting Queensland Football Club, which is his fictional football club. And by purchasing, by being part of this launch, you're part of this little community inside this joke of a fictional football club. All right, so that's it on the analysis. Make sure you follow Ken's page because he does some insane launches that get a lot of momentum. And if you want to work together, I'm looking for creators and founders. So check the description below and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.